The galactic Senate chamber looked like someone had taken a cathedral, melted it, stretched it, and then convinced a committee of 1,000 species, none of whom had ever agreed on anything, to redesign it while blindfolded. Light shimmered in vertical rivers across the vaulted crystal walls, refracting into colors unnamed in any human language. A dozen moons drifted lazily above the senators' heads, holographic but convincing enough to make a few amphibian delegates croak nervously whenever a shadow passed over them. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation, tension, and the faint scent of alien nervous sweat, which smelled disturbingly like burnt cinnamon. Commander Riley Knox stood perfectly still near the center platform, hands folded behind his back, posture relaxed, eyes calm. He didn't look like a threat. He looked like a polite schoolteacher attending a parent-teacher conference. A soft smile rested on his face, the kind that made aliens uneasy, because they could never tell if humans were amused or plotting something catastrophic. Knox didn't mind the confusion. He had learned long ago that a pleasant expression was the most effective camouflage an apex predator could wear. The Senate speakers pulsed with a low hum, signaling the start of the vote. Hundreds of alien delegates flicked, blinked, swayed, or twitched in their species-specific ways, preparing themselves for yet another historic decision, as they liked to call every meeting that involved punishing someone weaker than them. Today's session, however, was different. Today, their target was humanity. A Vorth Dominion senator, the one whose face resembled a collapsing souffle, slithered forward. "Honored delegates," the creature gurgled. "Execution Protocol 77A stands before us. We propose the immediate termination of 100,000 captured human females. They are unpredictable, emotionally volatile, dangerous to the stability of the Empire." A wave of murmurs rolled across the chamber. Some aliens nodded. Some clattered their mandibles. Some emitted high-frequency squeals of agreement. Humanity had annoyed them for years with its unpredictable diplomacy, stubborn resilience, and baffling ability to turn any situation, including defeat, into a rallying cry for vengeance. Commander Knox did not look away from the Vorth speaker. He merely raised a brow, as though hearing a toddler threaten to steal the moon. He didn't respond. Not yet. Another delegate, this one feathered, elegant, and thoroughly condescending, took the podium. "Humans form attachments too easily. They will go to irrational lengths to protect their offspring. Eliminating these 100,000 females will discourage future rebellions." Knox breathed slowly through his nose, measuring each word, each tone, each insult. His heart rate did not rise. His jaw did not tighten. He had been trained for this. Let the storm speak first. Let them reveal their intentions. Then strike. Votes began flashing across the central display. Blue meant in favor. Red meant against. Blue lights bloomed like a spreading infection. Knox watched. 20%. 40%. 60. 75. The chamber vibrated with satisfaction. Some species clapped. Some thumped their tails. One gelatinous delegate jiggled its entire body in celebration. The Vorth senator's grin widened, stretching its fleshy folds into something that might have been pride. Knox exhaled slowly, his breath calm, steady, almost bored. He reached into his coat, not for a weapon, but for a coffee flask, human-made, stainless steel, indestructible. The clink echoed softly in the tense chamber. A few alien guards flinched. Knox took a sip. 80%. 90. 94. The Vorth speaker turned toward Knox with smug finality. "Commander, your species is sentimental. Surely you understand this vote is necessary for balance." Knox tilted his head, studying the speaker as one might study a curious but doomed insect. He said nothing. 98%. A tiny, timid delegate from a peaceful herbivorous species cast the final vote. A faint, apologetic bleat escaped its throat as it pressed the glowing blue sigil. 100%. The chamber erupted in applause. And Knox finally spoke. His voice was warm, polite, almost friendly. "Thank you, honored delegates. Humanity acknowledges the result of your vote." Silence fell like a guillotine. Aliens stared at him, confused. They had expected outrage, tears, bargaining. Anything but this strange calm. Knox continued. 100,000 of our women, scheduled for execution. He nodded slowly. We'll take them all. The silence deepened. Somewhere in the chamber, an amphibian delegate hiccuped in terror. The fourth senator blinked. Take them? Commander, you misunderstand. The protocol authorizes. Oh, I understand perfectly, Knox interrupted gently. You voted to kill them. We are saying you won't. His smile widened just a touch, warm, polite, and absolutely lethal. We'll take them all. A ripple of unease swept across the chamber. Delegates leaned toward each other, muttering in growing panic. A crystalline species whispered, "Why is he smiling like that?" A reptilian general hissed, "Humans do not smile when they lose. They smile before they kill." Knox clasped his hands calmly. "We appreciate your enthusiasm. Truly. It's rare to see the entire galaxy united in a single decision." He sipped his coffee again. "But I must warn you, Earth has a tradition. When you endanger our people, we treat that as an invitation." The fourth senator stiffened. An invitation to what? Knox shrugged lightly. A family gathering. Another sip. You'll meet everyone. A few aliens whimpered. Knox stepped forward, voice still gentle. You think we are emotional? Sentimental? Illogical? He leaned in, eyes soft, tone conversational. Yet here you are, congratulating yourselves for provoking the species classified by 12 different empires as borderline unstoppable when motivated. The chamber's lights flickered. Not dramatically, just enough to unsettle everyone except Knox. He tapped his wristband. A tiny silent notification flashed across his retinal display. Operation Mirrorfall. Authorized. Knox's expression did not change. But in that moment, the temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. He bowed to the Senate, voice steady. Thank you, honored delegates. Your vote has been recorded. Humanity accepts your decision. Another ripple of panic. Knox turned away, taking one final sip. We'll take them all, he repeated softly. As he walked toward the exit, dozens of alien species watched him with growing horror. Because something had shifted. Not loudly, not visibly, but unmistakably. They had expected outrage. Instead, they'd seen something far worse. Acceptance. And in the quiet steps of the human commander leaving the chamber, every species suddenly understood the same terrible truth. Humanity never accepts defeat. Humanity prepares for payback. Deep in Knox's retinal HUD, another message blinked alive. General Knox, fleet arrival confirmed. Awaiting your signal. He did not react. But the soft smile on his face told the galaxy everything it needed to fear. Commander Riley Knox walked through the obsidian corridor of the Galactic Senate complex with the same steady, unhurried stride a tourist might use when strolling through a museum. Polite, curious, faintly amused. But the aliens who watched him felt none of that. They felt only dread. His smile hadn't faded since the vote. It hadn't even flickered. It stayed there, soft and almost warm, like a sunrise painted with hidden teeth. That smile frightened them more than the human war fleets they'd seen in broadcasts. War fleets were visible. Predictable. That smile? That was a riddle wrapped inside a warning wrapped inside something older, and far more dangerous. Knox stepped onto the gravlift, tilting his head politely to a feathered delegate, who shrank as though expecting him to explode. Good morning, Knox said with gentle friendliness. The alien emitted a trembling chirp and nearly dropped its datapad. Knox pretended not to notice. He was kind that way. The gravlift hummed downward toward the detainment decks where the 100,000 human women, scientists, soldiers, medics, farmers, teenagers, mothers, elders, were being held in a sprawling honeycomb of reinforced cells. The Empire had classified them as assets too troublesome to release and too risky to keep alive. Humans had classified them as family. The doors slid open. The air shifted from the sterile chill of bureaucracy to a heavier, metallic scent tinged with ozone, and something else, fear. Not human fear. Alien fear. Dozens of guards stood in a rigid corridor, blasters tightened in their grips, eyes wide, postures screaming "Don't get closer but don't leave there." Knox nodded cordially to each of them as he passed, as if greeting neighbors at a Saturday barbecue. "Morning. Good to see you. Love the discipline." The guards nearly collapsed. A senior officer, tall and insectoid, stepped forward. "Commander Knox, this area is restricted. The prisoners are awaiting processing." Knox paused, smiling at the officer with the kind of expression a kindly uncle might use when correcting a child's arithmetic. "They're not prisoners," he said softly. "They're citizens of my planet." "That is not legally." "Your laws," Knox murmured, "changed the moment you voted to kill them." The officer's wings trembled. He stepped aside without another word. Knox walked deeper into the facility. As he moved, human faces appeared behind transparent force barriers, tired, bruised, frightened, yet steady-eyed. Some stood tall. Some clung to each other. Some held children born in captivity. Their expressions shifted the instant they saw him. Surprise first, then relief, then something fiercer, recognition. Knox felt it hit him like a rising tide. Humanity shared something no empire law could categorize: unspoken loyalty. He let himself meet their gazes one by one. He didn't speak, but he nodded, and his nod carried a promise older than spaceflight. A young woman with a split lip whispered through the barrier, "Sir, did Earth even know we were here?" Knox's smile softened without losing its edge. "Earth never forgets its people." Another voice, older, steadier. "They voted to kill us." "They did," Knox answered. "And now they're discovering the consequences of that decision." A murmur spread through the detainees. Not fear. Something electric. Something that tasted like hope sharpened into steel. Knox turned as the doors at the far end of the hall rumbled open. A line of alien soldiers entered, escorting a group of human women being transferred for execution processing. The women walked with their heads high. Some glared. Some smirked. One elderly woman rolled her eyes so hard Knox almost laughed. Humanity had a peculiar talent for disrespecting tyrants simply by existing near them. A soldier stepped too close to one of the women, a young mother holding her toddler. Knox didn't raise his voice, but every soldier froze at the shift in the air. He didn't glare. He didn't threaten. He simply spoke as though giving gentle advice. "Please be careful with her," he said. "That's someone's mother." The soldier backed away so fast he tripped over his own weapon. Knox moved past them and entered the central shuttle bay, an enormous cavern where hundreds of captured humans were being lined up for transport. Floodlights glared overhead. Alien officers barked orders. Cold metal crates hummed with unfeeling machinery. On the far side, beyond the shimmering barrier doors, stars glittered. And then, one by one, shadows appeared in those stars. Human ships. Not warships bristling with cannons. Not battleships roaring with fire. These vessels glided forward silently, dark hulls gleaming like polished obsidian, running lights dimmed to ghostly whispers. They didn't power weapons. They didn't activate shields. They simply appeared, as if materializing from the void with perfect, chilling calm. Alien officers screamed into comms. Unauthorized ships. Raise defense grid. Another shouted, "They're surrounding us, why aren't their weapons hot?" A third squealed, "Why are there so many?" Knox watched the ships assemble like pieces of a chessboard sliding into checkmate. He lifted his wristband and tapped once. The human fleet responded instantly, every ship's hull flickering with a single signal light pulse, synchronized like the blink of a cosmic eye. "Commander!" crackled a human voice in his earpiece. "The carpool has arrived." Knox smiled, broad, cheerful, unmistakably friendly. "Excellent timing. Thank you." Aliens stared at him in horror. "Carpool?" Knox stepped to the observation window, watching the silent fleet form a ring around the station. He kept his posture loose, his tone conversational, as if explaining a minor inconvenience to co-workers. "We're here to pick up our people," he said. "Could have called ahead, but we didn't want to spoil the surprise." A crystalline senator trembled beside him. "Commander Knox, this is intimidation." "No," Knox replied with sincere politeness. "This is logistics." The senator's glow dimmed. Behind him, a human woman called out, her voice carrying strength despite exhaustion. "General Knox, are we going home?" He turned and his smile shifted. Warmer, truer, threaded with something quietly fierce. "Every single one of you." A wave of relief swept through the captives. Brief laughter, soft tears, hands clasping hands. Even the toddler giggled, reaching toward him. But tension still coiled in the air like a living thing. Because outside the window, alien warships were scrambling into formation. Too late, too clumsy, too frantic. Knox looked at them, then back at the trembling senators. "You still have a chance," he said softly. "A small one. Return them peacefully. No theatrics. No accidents. And maybe, we'll leave without teaching your fleet how quickly a human smile can turn into something else." A reptilian captain hissed, "You're bluffing." Knox leaned one elbow casually against the barrier and whispered, "You voted to kill 100,000 American women. We don't bluff about family." Every alien heart stuttered. The lights flickered again. His wristband vibrated. A new message appeared in his retinal HUD. "General, Phase 2 assets in position. Just say the word." Knox's gaze didn't shift. His smile didn't break. But every alien in the chamber felt the temperature drop, as though the void itself had inhaled. And Knox whispered, almost kindly, "Don't make me stop smiling." Panic spread through the galactic empire like fire racing through dry fields, crackling across star systems faster than the news could even be translated. Command centers blared alarms. Warships scrambled into defensive formations that looked more like tangled knots than disciplined lines. Entire species whispered ancient oaths of protection, while others hid under their consoles, convinced doom was coming in a human-shaped package. And all the while, Commander Riley Knox walked through the detainment complex with that same warm, maddening smile, steady, polite, and terrifying in its calmness. Every alien who crossed his path felt the same instinctive chill. This human was not bluffing. He was waiting. On the observation deck above the prison levels, a council of alien officers argued in frantic screeches, rumbles, and chirps. They sent too many ships. One shouted, "This is a rescue operation, not an invasion." Another insisted, though the tremor in her voice made it sound more like a prayer. Holographic displays flashed with red warnings as human vessels continued drifting into position, forming a silent, perfect ring around the station. No weapons drawn, no visible threats, just an overwhelming presence that crushed morale with its precision. Aliens couldn't understand it. Humans were supposed to be emotional. Emotional beings didn't show up quietly. Knox stood among the chaos, hands in his pockets, posture so relaxed it bordered on theatrical. "You're all overreacting," he said kindly. "They're just here to pick up some family." The officers stared at him, faces twisting with disbelief, terror, and something else. An emerging recognition that his calm wasn't a tactic. It was the truth. Humans didn't posture when someone threatened their own. They acted. A feathered general leaned toward him, voice trembling. "Commander, do your people always respond like this?" Knox shrugged. "Depends. Are you threatening our cats, our coffee supply, or 100,000 women? The severity adjusts." Down below, alien guards tried to herd the human captives into transfer lines, but those lines dissolved instantly when the women realized Knox was there. They surged toward the barriers, not in panic but with fierce relief. A group of soldiers backed away, shouting for support. One human woman stepped forward, tall and unbroken despite bruises on her jaw. She stared at the guards coldly. "Try touching my child again," she warned, voice steady, "and we'll teach you why Earth is catalogued as a predator world." Her tone carried no fear. Only truth. Several guards nearly dropped their weapons. The outburst spread like ripples. Other women began speaking up, some whispering, some laughing darkly. A young engineer leaned against her cell wall and muttered, "Told them humans don't stay prisoners long." A grandmother with silver hair smiled with quiet pride. "My boys back home used to say, 'Mama, don't start trouble. But I always told them, trouble starts itself. Knox's smile deepened. Their spirit wasn't broken. If anything, captivity had only hardened it into something unshakable. The Empire had expected helplessness. What they found instead was defiance sharpened into steel. The Empire's mistake came exactly 8 minutes later. A nervous captain aboard an orbital gunship misinterpreted the human fleet's quiet formation as a prelude to attack. In an act of panic bravado, he fired a warning shot, a thin beam of crackling red plasma that grazed the outer shields of a human cruiser. The cruiser didn't return fire. It didn't even shift position. It simply broadcast a single message on all frequencies, recorded. The word echoed through every warship, console, and officer's skull like a whispered omen. In the detainment bay, Knox's smile finally faded. He turned toward the nearest security monitor, eyes sharpening from friendly warmth to cold calculus. "They fired," he murmured. "That was unwise." The senior insectoid officer beside him swallowed hard. "Commander, that was a mistake, an unauthorized panic response. No harm was intended." Knox raised a hand gently. "Oh, I know. Mistakes happen." He stepped closer, voice softening even further. "But humanity has a rule. You point a weapon at our family, even by accident, and you lose the right to call it an accident." The officer's wings sagged. Knox tapped his wristband once. Human ships vanished. Not literally, but their lights dimmed, signatures flattened, and their engines fell into predatory silence. It felt like watching a forest stop breathing. The entire fleet entered a stealth formation so refined that dozens of alien scanners simply malfunctioned, unable to compute the absence. Officers screamed for technical support. Sensors rebooted. Shipyards broadcast distress calls. Entire crews panicked as the human fleet dissolved into ghost-like shadows, slipping beneath detection like wolves melting into fog. Knox watched the shadows form, expression unreadable. "Phase 2, he whispered, "is preparation." Alien admirals scrambled to regroup. Some barked frantic orders, trying to maintain discipline. Others demanded immediate surrender negotiations. Still others trembled behind consoles, convinced they were about to be erased. One young admiral sent a private message to his mentor on the Senate floor. "They smiled while planning this. What kind of species does that?" No answer came. Knox moved through the detainment bay, checking barriers, counting guards, reading structural weaknesses, making mental notes with clinical precision. He wasn't improvising. He'd been preparing since the vote was announced. A group of human women approached the barrier closest to him. One, barely 18, lifted her chin. "Sir, what happens now?" Knox paused. He looked at her, not as a commander evaluating a soldier, but as a man carrying the weight of a wounded world. "Now?" he said softly. "Now the Empire realizes something they should have known from the beginning." His voice lowered to a dangerous whisper. "Humans do not lose people quietly." A murmur of fierce satisfaction rippled through the captives. Above them, the deck lights flickered as sirens wailed. The alien network struggled under an overwhelming flood of encrypted human signals, silent commands bouncing between ships, drones, and unseen operatives. The Empire scrambled to trace them, but every pathway collapsed into dead ends. Frantic officers began shouting contradictory orders, sending fleets into panic spirals. Knox stood still in the center of the storm, hands clasped calmly behind his back, as if watching weather patterns form. A single transmission crackled through the intercom, cutting through the chaos. "Human. Confident. Cold. General Knox. We are fully in position. Awaiting your signal to initiate Phase 3. The room froze. Aliens stared at Knox with wide, fearful eyes, waiting to hear whether the galaxy would fall. For a moment, Knox didn't move. Then he inhaled deeply, slow, deliberate, final. He lifted his wristband, and the entire detainment bay held its breath. The moment Commander Riley Knox lifted his wristband, the entire detainment bay seemed to exhale, not in relief, but in the sharp, trembling way prey exhale right before they realized the predator wasn't stalking them, it was waiting. A soft chime pulsed through his retinal display. The human fleet, invisible now, shifted positions in a silent, synchronized sweep. No alarms accompanied the movement. No threats. No dramatic declarations. Just a quiet, perfect reconfiguration, like knives sliding into their sheaths before the draw. Knox lowered his wrist, expression serene. "Initiate," he said. The walls didn't shake. There were no tremors, no explosions, no cinematic rumblings. Instead, a low-frequency hum rippled outward, subtle and almost soothing, until every alien in the room felt their bones vibrate. Lights flickered. Barriers shimmered. The temperature dropped by a few degrees as if the air itself sensed something ancient stirring outside the station. Panic erupted instantly. Alien officers shouted orders that contradicted each other. Guards scrambled for cover. A crystalline senator collapsed to the floor, glowing erratically. Knox walked forward, unhurried, letting the silence between alarms deepen. The hum increased. It wasn't a weapon, not directly. It was the activation of Operation Mirafall, humanity's gravitational net, a lattice of microfold distortions cast across the system like an invisible spiderweb. Alien fleets that had been scrambling seconds earlier suddenly drifted off course, pulled into spirals, engines whining uselessly as if struggling against a cosmic tide too vast to comprehend. A reptilian general screamed into his comms. "Our thrusters aren't responding. Something is dragging us. What have they done?" Echoes of similar cries multiplied through the bay. An insectoid officer hammered controls in a frenzy. "We've lost vector control. This shouldn't be possible. Our ships are." His breath hitched as his display showed entire squadrons tumbling, helpless, like toys dropped into an undertow. Knox's voice was almost sympathetic. "You shouldn't have voted on lives you didn't understand." The gravitational net tightened, slow and deliberate, pulling enemy ships into perfectly aligned clusters where human boarding teams were already breaching without firing a single wide-scale shot. Politeness defined every transmission from human marines. "Please step away from the console. Hands visible, thank you. We appreciate your cooperation." The kindness only intensified the terror. Down in the detainment bay, human women pressed closer to the barriers, their fear replaced by an emerging awe. Some whispered prayers. Some whispered curses. Many simply watched Knox with a reverence that felt heavier than gratitude. Even those who had doubted rescue now understood. Earth had come with its full weight. And humanity did not do things halfway. Alien reinforcements tried to storm the bay, but the doors slid open before them, not damaged, not forced. Opened. Human operatives walked in with quiet confidence, armor matte black, helmets reflective, their movements precise and almost gentle. They didn't raise weapons unless necessary. They simply advanced, guiding terrified guards to the floor and bypassing defenses with expert efficiency. One Marine paused to help a gelatinous alien untangle its limbs from a dangling wire before continuing. Knox nodded to the lead Marine. "You took your time." "Traffic, sir," the Marine deadpanned. "A whole empire panicking slows things down." A few human women laughed, real laughter, bright and bruised but alive. Knox turned toward the central control console, bypassing its biometric locks with a single encrypted pulse. Barriers dissolved across the bay. Cells flickered open. The sudden rush of freedom was almost too much. Some fell to their knees, overwhelmed, while others sprinted into each other's arms with ragged sobs of relief. Knox held up a calming hand. "Stay in groups. Follow the operatives. No one gets lost. No one gets left." Those words alone steadied them. Alien officers watched in mute devastation as their fortress, once an emblem of imperial dominance, fell without a battle. One feathered admiral whispered, How are you doing this?" Knox met his gaze. "By planning farther ahead than you imagined. By counting the cost you refused to count." Humans streamed toward shuttles waiting beyond the loading bay. The gravitational net kept all enemy reinforcements at bay, suspending the Empire's counterstrike in a helpless constellation of drifting ships. As each group boarded, Knox walked alongside them, offering quiet nods, supportive glances, and an occasional reassuring word. He wasn't larger than life. He wasn't dramatic. He was steady in a way that made people feel safe simply by existing in his shadow. Near the final boarding line, an elderly woman grasped his arm. "Son, they were going to kill us." Her voice shook, not with fear but with the disbelief of someone who had survived the impossible. Knox placed his hand over hers. "Not while we breathe," he said. "Not while any human breathes." Her eyes filled with tears, grief, yes, but also something fiercer, pride. Outside the station, alien fleets continued to spiral helplessly, trapped in the mirrored gravitational wells humans had woven like a fisherman's net. Boarding reports chimed through Knox's comms. "Hostile vessels secured. 0 casualties on our side. Minimal resistance, sir, they surrendered after we said hello." Knox allowed himself a faint exhale. Good. Fewer dead meant fewer grieving families on both sides. A high-ranking Vorth commander was dragged into the bay by 2 Marines, still protesting. "You can't do this. You're violating Imperial law." Knox approached him calmly. "Your law ended when your vote happened." The Vorth sputtered. "We miscalculated." Knox nodded once. "Yes. You miscalculated humans." He glanced toward the panoramic viewport as the last shuttles launched. Stars scattered across the void like cold sparks. Beneath them, human ships emerged from stealth, colossal silhouettes lit only by faint glimmers along their hulls. For a heartbeat, the galaxy seemed to hold still, suspended between terror and awe. Knox opened a universal broadcast channel. His voice carried through every Imperial vessel, every command terminal, every trembling officer's headset. "Today, you voted to extinguish 100,000 lives. We responded as any family would. We came for them. And now we're taking them home." Silence followed, heavy, suffocating, absolute. Then Knox's tone darkened, quiet but undeniable. "But understand this. This wasn't a rescue operation. It was a warning. A mirror held to your intentions. You revealed yourselves today, and so did we." The broadcast ended. He turned away from the console, following the last group toward the evacuation dock. Behind him, alien officers stared at each other, slowly realizing what had truly transpired. Humans had not merely rescued their own. They had mapped every hostile fleet, identified every complicit species, marked every system that voted yes, laid the groundwork for consequences that would echo across generations. Knox stepped onto the shuttle ramp. The door began to close. And the last thing the aliens saw was that same quiet, polite smile. The smile they should have feared.